interview, all the stuff up there as well. And we are going to bring in the fantastic DJ Dan. He seems we always kind of
just for a minute because I'm not quite ready.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. I was just going to discuss. I wanted to wait and discuss the smoker fight with Dan with us. So when you get ready, you call back in. You're already in the mix here. So when you're ready, just call back and we'll. I'm just watching.
Cool?
I'm just
Are we
watching.
Cool doing the first interview via Skype.
Yes, we're good.
That's okay, and then we can switch over to Zoom and do the second one.
We can do that,
and then stick them both together. All right, well, give me 10 minutes.
I'm just watching.
I'll be able to train in properly.
I'm just watching Nancy Pelosi meltdown over here on Twitter, and it's always fun. So so you do your thing, baby, and we'll see you back here in a few.
Sorted. I'm ready. All right, speak to you soon.
All right, brother. Appreciate it. There goes DJ Dan. He'll be back with us, and then we'll talk about the smoker fight. So, Johnny Kim, the fantastic Johnny Kim. He's mellowed though in his age. He is mellowed. He used to be, I'm a proud Asian man. I don't have no women swimming from my nuts. Now he's he's kind of mellowed. He didn't kill me a few years ago when I walked into the Muse Ballroom in Salina. So, but we are gonna go to our next guest, who is gonna join us here in just a few seconds on our Sunday radio program. And I think Steve's got a better background than all of us. He's look at that.
Yeah.
He is planes, trains, and automobiles, baby. Steve Snyder joins us today here in a broadcast. He's an 8th Air Force historian and author. He is also the expert on the 8th Air Force and the air war over Europe during World War II. And Steve has a great book, Shot Down. It's a true story about brave individuals, featuring Steve's own father, Howard Snyder, and the crew of the B-17 bomber plane, Susan Ruth. It's set within the compelling events of the greatest conflict in world history. And Shot Down has a 5-star reader review rating on Amazon. He's received 25 book awards. In addition, it is sold in gift stores at major air museums in the U.S., including the National World War II Museum in New Orleans, the L.A. National Museum of U.S. and Air Force in Dayton, and, of course, the National Museum of the 8th Air Force in Pooler, Georgia. And Steve joins us today here via the magic of the old Skype, the old Skype-a-rooney, as Nathan used to not like me saying it. Also, our good friend Samantha is joining us. She is my Valentine. She's your Valentine. She's everybody's Valentine. And the fantastic Jaybird Wells. No matter what you've heard, Jaybird is not the original gerbil in the batting cage. She is here. She is there, and apparently she's calling us from Nice, France.
And no, this is Venice. This is
Venice.
Not France.
There you go.
Venice, Italy.
Venice, Italy.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, of course, the historian would correct me. That's great.
I am not vicious, so don't listen to him.
and DJ Dan from the United Kingdom, just an amazing little panel today. And so, Steve, tell us a little bit about Shot Down, my friend. This is a great little book.
Well, thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody.
Yes.
I guess we're all over the place. I live in Southern California in Orange County, little beach community called Seal Beach. But talking about my book, it recounts the experiences of a 10-man B-17 bomber crew after their plane was shot down on February 8th of 1944 by 2 German fighters. And it goes into detail about what happened to each member of the crew and about all the Belgian people that risked their lives to help them. 5 of the crew came home, but 5 of them did not. So it has definite tragedy in it, but also happy outcomes as well.
That sounds great. We love a good, aerial battle story, anything like that over here in the UK,
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Sounds awesome.
Well, I've been to the UK. I've been to the UK twice, actually 3 times. My dad was a member of the 306 bomb group, which is stationed at Thurley, England. There's a nice little museum there at Thurley. It's just outside of Bedford, about an hour north of London. But I love going to the UK and all the history there.
That's awesome.
I'm sure you'd get a good reception with this book.
Oh, yeah. In fact, the last time I was there in 2019, I was interviewed on the BBC.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's
BBC.
awesome.
Well,
That's
there we
awesome.
go.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Wow.
So, Steve, your book is amazing. There is quite the little twist here in the book. You actually interviewed the guy who shot your dad's plane down. Tell us a little bit about this.
What?
Oh my
Yeah. Yeah. All my dad knew and all the Air Force records show was that 2 German Focke-Wulf fighters attacked my dad's plane. It was on a mission to Frankfurt, Germany, where they dropped their bombs successfully, but the bomb bay doors got hit by anti-aircraft flak, and they couldn't get the doors back up, and as a result, that caused a drag in the plane. They lost airspeed, and they couldn't keep up with the bomber formation heading back to their bases in England, so they were easy targets for these German fighters who came in and shot the Susan Ruth down. And I never even dawned on me to try to find the German pilots, because I thought they probably died in the war, or it's 70 years later, they've passed away by now, or I can't speak German, so what was the point? But one day when I was doing my research, my wife, Glenda, just casually threw out, well, why don't you try to find the German pilot that shot down your dad's plane? And I'm thinking to myself, she's naive. She doesn't know what she's talking about. It'd be impossible. But like a good husband, I did what she told me to do. And,
Sorry.
I found him. His name's Hans Berger. And interestingly enough, he's the only person in the whole shot down story who's still living.
Wow.
He's 97 years old, lives in Munich, Germany. And fortunately for me, he became a translator after the war and speaks perfect English.
Oh, nice.
So I was so excited to find him. And then I come to find out that actually the gunners of my dad's plane shot him down at the same time. They actually shot each other down.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
He held out and made it through the war. So it was such an exciting experience to find him. I get chills just talking about it. And for the book, I just interviewed him over the telephone and through email. But since I wrote the book, I've been to Munich twice and visited Hans, and we've become good friends.
Oh. No wonder everybody wants to talk to you. That's an awesome story.
Yes, it is.
So, is there going to be a sequel?
I doubt it. I wasn't a writer by profession. I had no writing background or training. I was in sales and sales management for 40 years. And after I retired, I had the time to really delve into my dad's story in more detail. When I was growing up, I knew the basics of my dad's war history. He was a B-17 pilot. He was stationed in England with the 8th Air Force. His plane was named the Susan Ruth after my oldest sister, who was 1 year old at the time that he went overseas. And then he flew bombing missions over occupied Europe. He was shot down on February 8th of 44. And he was missing in action for 7 months. But he evaded capture with the help of many Belgium people and finally made it back home. But when I was doing my research, I just became fascinated with the story of my dad and his crew. There were 2 items that my dad had that were really significant. One was a diary that he wrote while he was missing in action about his plane being shot down. That's absolutely riveting. That's in the book. And the other, all the letters that my dad wrote to my mother while he was stationed in Europe before he got shot down. He was very candid in those letters. And he talked what life was like on combat missions. He talked what life was like on the air base, what life was like in England and London at the time, escapades of him and his crew. And the more I delved into this, the more I just came to the conclusion that the story of my dad and his crew, and the book's just not about my dad, but about each member of his crew. It was just so unique and so compelling that people needed to know about it. And so I decided to write a book, and it's changed my life, basically. It's been very well received, and in most years, I'm traveling a lot, air shows all over the United States, signing copies of the book and doing a lot of PowerPoint presentations to all these different types of groups. But obviously, with COVID this last year, I haven't been able to travel. My first one this year is going to be next month, March 27th, at an air museum in Phoenix, Arizona. So I'm kind of glad, happy to get back on the road a little bit. So I was just retired, kicking back, sleeping in, taking naps, going for walks, reading books, and I wrote this book, and all of a sudden it's changed my life. So it's been very gratifying, very fun.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, Dan, do you have any questions for Steve?
Yeah, Steve, you mentioned he wrote a bit about what life was like in England, without obviously telling us the whole book, but what was it like? How did he find it? How did the British and the English sort of receive him?
Well, they call it the friendly invasion. Because all the airmen and the GIs came over to England, the airmen to fly bombing missions, and all the infantry, the soldiers, for the invasion on D-Day, June 6th. But England at the time, they had, been in the war for 3 years.
Yeah.
And, they had the Blitz, so they had to go through the Blitz, and there was rationing, and so the country really was on hard times by the time that my dad went over, and the U.S. actually started coming over, and they had the blackouts. My dad would talk about that. When he'd have a leave and take the train to go in England, it was all blacked out, and you couldn't find your way around because nothing was lit. He got lost all the time trying to find pubs or speakeasies or something. And then you had all the ladies of the night, reaching out for you, asking if you wanted to have a little fun. But the British and the GIs got along very well. I think the British men didn't like it very much because the U.S. airmen were very well paid, much better paid than the British. So they had all this extra money, and they had access to cigarettes, they had access to nylons, they had access to the chocolate. And so the British girls, they loved the Americans. They were their only exposure to the Americans was on TV, like cowboys, and so it was all these glamour. It looks so they loved the GIs coming over there because they had money to spend, and they took them dancing and out to dinner, and so it was a good time, but it was a unique experience for the Americans. Because you have to remember, back then, the country U.S. was totally different. Now today, most people live in the cities. But back then, it was very rural. Most people lived out in the countries. A lot of people lived on farms. And these guys were only like 18, 19, early 20s.
Wow.
A lot of these guys had never been out of their home county. And all of a sudden, they're halfway around the world, fighting a war. And they're in London, which at the time was the most extravagant and amazing city in the world, and they were away from their parents, their mothers, and they could do whatever they wanted. They could drink for the first time, or chase women for the first time, or drink alcohol. So it was an amazing experience for those guys, very exciting, although once they got into combat, that changed very quickly.
That's awesome. That is fantastic. It is.
Yeah, they had an expression that of the Yanks. They would go, over here, oversexed and overpaid.
Oh my goodness!
Lord have mercy.
There's a YouTube video actually, and it's like not propaganda. It's like an information video for American soldiers and pilots. for when they come to England and when they go and visit the pubs, and sort of it almost sort of just tells them a little bit how to behave, because they know that the British guys, have been in the war for years, they've got no money, they're very, they're not very well paid at all, and it was really quite interesting watching that, and seeing the American pilots and learning about how much more they got paid and so on and so forth. They were, quite wealthy compared to the Brits, because obviously they'd been on rations and everything else for numerous of years. But no, fascinating, absolutely fascinating, Steve.
Also, the Brits were a lot more conservative and, kind of more, I don't know if withdrawn is the right expression, but the GIs, they're really these outgoing guys. They were loud, they had different personalities. So you're right. There was like a manual on, how to behave so you didn't, insult the local British people.
The Pacific one I'm referring to is the one where you go to a pub. It was sort of guidance about going into a pub and how to behave. You should, if you've not seen it, have a look, because it's really quite funny. It's really good, and I get it, and what a different time all of that was. Everything's obviously all now digital, and you're fighting the enemy from miles and miles and miles away.
Another thing that was unique for the airmen is that, they would go on these combat missions, and they'd go on a mission, seeing friends die, other planes going down. It was horrific. And then they'd come back home, and that evening they could be in a pub, drinking beer and having a date. So it was a totally different type of war. Flying combat missions was brutal. There were more men killed in the 8th Air Force in the air war over Europe than the entire Marine Corps fighting in the Pacific.
Wow.
It was your chances of surviving these full tour in the air war over Europe was very, very slim. And those planes back then, they weren't pressurized. So above 10,000 feet, they had to go on oxygen, or else without it, they'd pass out and be dead in a couple minutes. And it was extremely cold. It was minus 40 to 60 degrees below zero. So frostbite was a huge problem. And a lot of airmen were hospitalized for lengthy periods of time with serious frostbite injuries. And then they had to deal with the German fighters and then the German anti-aircraft fire. It was hell going on those missions.
Man. Well, as we wrap up here with you, Steve, where can people get your book and everything else?
Okay. Well, most people get the book on Amazon. It's available in every type of format, a print book, both hard copy and paperback, in all the ebook forms, Kindle, etc. Also available as an audio book. But in the print book, there's over 200 time period photographs, so you can see, you visualize everything that you're reading about. If someone wants to buy a signed copy of the book, they can go to my website, which is stevesnyderauthor.com, Snyder spelled S-N-Y-D-E-R, where they can get an autographed copy of the book. And on my website, I will mention that it's just not about my book. There's a wealth of information about the air war over Europe, World War II, interviews with veterans, links to archival footage about the air war over Europe and other things in World War II. So if somebody wants to get an education about the air war and World War II, they can go on the website.
That's awesome.
That is fantastic. Well,
Great
Steve, I appreciate it, my friend. Thanks for coming on and chatting with me and the crew, and good luck with everything. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Good to see everybody.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it, brother.
God bless.
There he
Bye,
goes,
Lord.
Steve
God,
Snyder, and